Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am?
That.
What'd you say?
Hey, when are you gonna get some kind of love life?
I got a love life. Yo, this is girl at school.
It's a job. And like with any other job that anyone would have, work at it, be professional, show up on time. You know, there's the whole Hollywood stereotype of everyone's late.
Remember Junior from My Wife and Kids? The reason he disappeared will shock you. For years, George O. Gore II had audiences laughing as the goofy, lovable Junior Kyle.
Now wipe them tears.
Oh, these ain't tears, Mama. These is eye boogers.
But behind the laughter, the set was boiling with tension. He clashed with Tisha Campbell in front of cast and crew, faced rumors of producers threatening to cut him loose, and felt underpaid despite carrying much of the comedy.
You know, it's the business of rejection. You hear no 100 times more than you hear yes.
And that was only the beginning. To understand the storm that drove him away, we start with the war zone on a sitcom stage. The bright, candy-colored set of My Wife and Kids was a battleground disguised as a suburban living room. For millions of viewers between 2001 and 2005, it looked like the perfect household relentless laughter, lighthearted lessons, and the antics of the Kyle family. But while the audience saw harmony, behind the cameras it was far from a picture-perfect sitcom. At the heart of this story stood George O. Gore II, the actor behind the goofy, endearing Michael Kyle Jr., or Junior on screen. He was the lovable fool, the butt of his father's jokes, a young man whose blank stares, awkward lines, and misplaced confidence became one of the most memorable trademarks of early 2000s comedy.
Hey, on my test.
You what?
My son almost got an A on his test.
But off-screen, Gore wasn't always laughing. Beneath the polished production, he was dealing with professional tension, creative frustration, and personal heartbreak, all of which were pushing him away from the Hollywood spotlight he had worked so hard to reach. The set itself was a high-pressure environment. At the top of the hierarchy was Damon Wayans, the comedy titan and creative driver of the show. Wayans' comedic brilliance set the tone, but it also created an atmosphere where timing was everything and mistakes were not taken lightly. Tisha Campbell, Gore's on-screen mother, was equally formidable. A seasoned veteran from Martin and the House Party films, she brought a wealth of experience, and she wasn't afraid to let others know it. Whispers from those who worked on the show suggest that Campbell had a habit of correcting Gore's comedic timing mid-scene, often coaching him right in front of cast and crew. For a young actor still trying to find his footing, this public scrutiny was difficult to stomach. Gore, however, was no novice. He had been acting since childhood and even starred in the cult classic film Juice at age 10, playing the younger version of Omar Epps' character.
Oblong, unusually large, and just plain old unnatural head.
He carried his own artistic instincts and wasn't one to silently absorb criticism. When Campbell would lecture him, he reportedly clapped back with remarks that her methods were old and boring. It wasn't explosive, but it was a quiet rebellion, a battle of generational styles and egos playing out in the wings of a primetime sitcom. This conflict was more than personal pride. Gore felt creatively stifled. His role as Junior was written to be purely comedic, an exaggerated fool with little depth. But as a performer, Gore longed for more complex material. He wanted to stretch, to show that he could deliver more than just laughs. Instead, week after week, he found himself boxed in, reduced to punchlines that overshadowed his range. Adding fuel to the fire was Gore's ambition. At just 22, he stepped behind the camera to direct an episode of My Wife and Kids. It was no small feat that few actors that young were trusted with such responsibility, especially on a top-rated network sitcom. The episode, Outbreak Monkey, even featured a cameo from a rising superstar, a young LeBron James. While Gore's directorial achievement was groundbreaking, it wasn't universally celebrated. Some questioned his readiness, while others whispered about jealousy behind closed doors. According to rumors, arguments with producers grew heated, and some even considered writing him off the show entirely. Money was another source of discontent. Despite being a fan favorite and carrying much of the comedic weight, Gore reportedly earned far less than his co-stars. Hollywood has a long history of underpaying young or lesser-known actors, and Gore seemed to be yet another example. To outsiders, the paychecks of sitcom stars look glamorous, but insiders whispered that he was grossly underpaid compared to what his role contributed to the show's success. To him, the laughter he generated didn't seem to match the numbers on his checks. But yet, he learned to forget most of the hurts.
You have to have short-term memory. I mean, you really do. You have to forget that. You internalize it, you take it in, you learn from it. You know, if you wanted to do it one way, but you went against your instincts and did it another way. You know, you learn from those things, you internalize it, and then you have to forget about it.
It's always learn from your mistakes and move on.
Learn from your mistakes and move on. You have to move on quickly.
You can't
dwell on any of this. You have to move on quickly. A lot of times you're rejected for things that really have nothing to do with you.
And then there was love, or rather, heartbreak. Gore's on-screen relationship with Vanessa, played by Brooklyn Sudano, wasn't just TV magic. The chemistry spilled into real life, and for a time, the two were genuinely a couple. Fans were fascinated, obsessing over their romance both on and off the screen. But as tensions on set escalated, cracks appeared in their relationship. When Gore clashed with producers and his standing on the show grew shaky, Sudano reportedly didn't stand by his side. Sources claim she distanced herself, not wanting to get entangled in his professional conflicts. For Gore, who had always kept his private life guarded, this was a devastating blow. It may have been his one great heartbreak, and it stung even more as her career ascended while his began to fade. All of these struggles, creative, financial, professional, and personal, collided to form a perfect storm. To the world, My Wife and Kids was a lighthearted comedy. But to George O. Gore II, the set often felt like a war zone. Hollywood is, as he later reflected, a business of rejection. For every yes, there are 100 no's. And though he had been blessed with the yes of starring in a hit sitcom, the unspoken no's were overwhelming. No to creative freedom. No to fair pay. No to lasting respect. The stage that made him a household name was also the one that was quietly pushing him toward the exit. When My Wife and Kids was canceled in 2005, it wasn't just the end of a hit sitcom. For George O. Gore II, it was the beginning of a long, intentional retreat from the spotlight. The goofy, ever-present junior that millions had grown up with began to fade, and in his place emerged a man quietly redefining his identity. This wasn't a sudden vanishing act, but a slow, deliberate fade into the background, marked by a handful of projects that felt more like distant echoes of his past than stepping stones to a larger future. For a while, Gore's connection to the Wayans family kept him tethered to the industry. He lent his voice to Thugaboo, 2 animated specials created by the Wayans brothers in 2006.
That was more like a meteor, Slim.
In 2009, he played Ray in Dance Flick, a parody film directed by Damien Dante Wayans, and packed with Wayans relatives both in front of and behind the camera.
Okay, let's do this.
And in 2013, he reappeared in Second Generation Wayans, a BET comedy where he portrayed a fictionalized version of himself. There, he was even called an honorary Wayans family member. But the show lasted just 1 season before being canceled, and that became his final on-screen credit.
She quit her job and won't return my phone calls.
The truth,
Looking back, these projects were sporadic, small flickers of activity that never matched the shine of his sitcom days. To be blunt, none of them were bangers. Critics were quick to point out the gap between the hype and the execution. His acting style, once beloved in the sitcom format, was called dated and old news. In an era when television was rapidly shifting toward edgier, grittier storytelling, George O. Gore II was being dismissed as a relic from a softer, simpler time in television. But the truth went deeper than reviews or canceled projects. Gore had been typecast. The character of Junior, the lovable fool, was so strongly imprinted in the minds of audiences and casting directors that they struggled to imagine him as anything else. For 5 years, his talent had been locked into one mold, and as many child and teen stars have painfully discovered, breaking out of that box is one of Hollywood's most unforgiving traps. The inconsistency of work weighed on him. For an actor, especially one who had peaked so young, the uncertainty can lead to both professional doubt and personal reflection. Gore was facing the same reality that countless child stars encounter. The phone doesn't ring as often, the auditions dry up, and the path forward becomes foggy. To outsiders, it looked like Hollywood had chewed him up and spit him out. But behind the silence, another truth was taking shape. In a rare 2017 interview, Gore finally spoke openly about why he stepped away. He made it clear, he wasn't just forgotten by Hollywood, he had walked away from it. Calling himself a former actor and a current writer and producer, he reframed his identity in his own words.
Just George. George. Born in North Carolina, grew up in Maryland. I now live in Los Angeles. Former actor, director, current writer, producer. That's pretty much it.
His explanation was candid, even vulnerable. "I'm not good at being famous," he admitted. Fame, for him, was less of a blessing and more of a burden. "I'm a quiet guy," he said. "I like just being behind the scenes. I like the anonymity of it." It was a stunning revelation, because in those words, he wasn't bitter, he was relieved. Gore wasn't chasing roles anymore. He wasn't waiting for casting calls. He had made a conscious decision to step away from the camera, to leave behind the red carpets, the gossip blogs, and the endless scrutiny of celebrity life. Instead, he quietly redirected his creative energy. He admitted he had been doing uncredited writing since My Wife and Kids ended, sharpening a new craft away from Hollywood's harsh spotlight. His retreat was so effective that it turned him into a figure of mystery. Fans wanted to know what happened, why he disappeared, what his life looked like now. But Gore never offered the juicy details. His silence became part of his story. Unlike so many of his peers who spiraled into scandal, addiction, or financial ruin, Gore embraced invisibility. Financially, he had done well enough during his sitcom prime to buy his freedom. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million largely built from his years as Junior, he had the cushion to choose privacy. While some might label his career as a disappointment, others see it as a victory. He navigated the minefield of child stardom, avoided public breakdowns, and carved out a life on his own terms. He didn't burn out, he walked away. And then, quietly, in 2022, he re-emerged, but not as the actor's fans once knew. Instead, he appeared as a co-writer of Disney Plus' Sneakerella, a modern reimagining of Cinderella.
Sometimes you just gotta let your dreams go.
It wasn't a big red carpet comeback or a starring role. It was a subtle, powerful reminder. George O. Gore II was still here, still creating, but now entirely on his own terms. His fade into anonymity wasn't the story of a star who lost everything. It was the story of a man who decided the spotlight wasn't worth the cost, and chose instead to write his own narrative from the shadows. Long before the sitcom scripts and Hollywood soundstages, George O. Gore II's story began in Fort Washington, Maryland, where he was born on December 15, 1982. He wasn't a child pushed into the industry by overzealous parents. He walked into it himself, carrying an innate charisma too magnetic to ignore. The first glimpse of his destiny appeared not on a film set, but at a preschool Christmas party. At just 3 years old, little George took the microphone and emceed the entire event. He wasn't simply reciting lines, he was commanding the room, hosting with a confidence that stunned adults twice his size.
So what happened was, when I was 3 years old, I emceed a Christmas program at my preschool. And there was a lady in the audience who knew a talent manager in New York and suggested to my parents that, hey, your kid might have some talent.
In the audience that day was a woman who knew a talent manager in New York. Impressed, she approached his parents and urged them to send a tape. Weeks later, the Gore family received a call that would change their lives. 4-year-old George was flown to New York, where he sat alone in a meeting with a professional talent manager.
Maybe you should send this tape to this manager, just see what happens. So my parents sent the tape, and then about a month or two after that, she calls back and she wants to meet me. We go up there, we meet. I'm 4 years old at this point, and I have a solo interview with a grown-up. And apparently I was impressive enough, and that got me started in my career.
Most children would have been overwhelmed. George? He aced it. Apparently I was impressive enough, he later recalled. And that got me started in my career. Just like that, he had representation and a future in Hollywood. Gore always credited his parents for the stability that grounded him. They weren't chasing fame. They were guiding their son, making sure he never lost himself in an industry that chews up children. That balance paid off. By age 9, he landed his first major film role in Juice, 1992, playing Brian, the little brother of Omar Epps' character. Sharing screen time with icons like Tupac Shakur and Samuel L. Jackson, the young actor held his own. His performance was small but memorable, a clear sign that this child wasn't a gimmick, but a genuine talent. From there, he kept working. He showed up in Eddie, 1996, alongside Whoopi Goldberg, and in 1997, he played a Harlem boy in The Devil's Advocate with Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves. But while film roles gave him credibility, it was television that would make him unforgettable. At the same time, George was still a student at Suitland High School in Forestville, Maryland. He was trying to live a normal teenage life, homework, friends, hallways full of gossip, while juggling a budding Hollywood career. It was a dual existence that most kids could never imagine.
But, all the traveling, I would go to New York, I would return back to Maryland at, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, then I would wake up and go to school the next day.
For young black actors in the 1990s, opportunities were slim and expectations were sky high. Gore carried that weight with quiet determination, proving he wasn't just a precocious kid, but a professional with real discipline. By the early 90s, Hollywood had taken notice. George wasn't just a child actor, he was a prodigy. The foundation was set, and soon he would land the role that would define his young career. The preschooler who once grabbed a mic at a Christmas party was about to grab the attention of an entire nation. His next project wouldn't just showcase his talent, it would etch him into television history. In 1994, at just 11 years old, George O. Gore II took on the role that would cement his reputation as one of the most promising young actors of his generation. He was cast as Gregory G. Williams, the son of Detective J.C. Williams, Malik Yoba, on FOX's groundbreaking crime drama New York Undercover. The show was a cultural earthquake. Stylish, gritty, and unapologetically urban, it was one of the first mainstream dramas centered on Black and Latino leads. It quickly became the most popular show for Black audiences during its run.
I've got your daughter. Money tomorrow, 10 a.m. or the girl dies.
Now, Detective Nita Marino will stop at nothing.
Playing G was no easy task. The character was the child of an undercover cop, a boy forced to live with danger, absence, and constant fear. Gore had to balance innocence with the pain of uncertainty, portraying a child who loved his father but struggled to understand the violent world he lived in. For 4 seasons, from 1994 to 1998, audiences watched him grow up on screen, appearing in 41 episodes that showcased his range and depth. Hollywood noticed. Gore's performance earned him 3 NAACP Image Award nominations, a Young Artist Award nomination in 1997, and a Young Star Award nomination in 1998. These weren't participation trophies. They were recognition that this child actor could hold his own alongside seasoned stars like Malik Yoba and Michael DeLorenzo. New York Undercover wasn't just a job. It was his training ground. The show demanded maturity, and Gore rose to it. The heavy subject matter forced him to dig deep emotionally, developing skills that most actors don't master until adulthood. This foundation made him stand out, but it also created a fascinating challenge. Years later, when he transitioned into comedy on My Wife and Kids, Gore admitted he had to consciously rewire himself. After years of playing dramatic roles, comedy felt alien at first. When the series ended in 1998, Gore was no longer the wide-eyed preschooler who charmed talent scouts. He was a teenager with an impressive resume, critical acclaim, and industry respect. By the time he graduated from Suitland High in 2000, he had already achieved more than many actors do in a lifetime. But the next phase of his career would take him somewhere no one expected. The serious, dramatic prodigy of New York Undercover was about to step onto a sitcom stage and become a household name for an entirely different reason. The boy who once carried the emotional heart of a gritty crime drama was about to reinvent himself as comedy's most lovable fool. As the new millennium dawned, George O. Gore II was ready for a change. After years immersed in the gritty drama of New York Undercover, he graduated from high school with a surprising plan. He was going to quit acting. He wanted college, a normal routine, and life far away from cameras. But Hollywood wasn't done with him yet. At that very moment, comedy legend Damon Wayans was building a new sitcom for ABC. Casting directors needed the perfect son, and Gore's name surfaced. At first, he didn't even want to audition. Sitcoms, with their fast punchlines and live audiences, felt worlds apart from the heavy dramas he was used to. But his mother urged him to go, reminding him he had nothing to lose. So, he walked in reluctantly, and walked out with the role that would change everything.
Had to talk me into going on the audition.
Really?
I honestly,
so your mom wanted you to
Yeah,
go.
my mom wanted me to go. I didn't want to go. My mom just said, I had nothing to lose.
In 2001, George O. Gore II became Michael Kyle, the Jr. on My Wife and Kids.
Kyle is entitled to the money in the wallet found by that man.
The show exploded from day one, instantly dominating Wednesday nights. Gore's character, Junior, was goofy, lovable, and hilariously dim-witted, a sharp contrast to the serious roles he'd built his career on. He became the heart of the comedy, the son who could always be counted on for a laugh, and the butt of his father's endless jokes. But what made his performance special was the depth he brought to Junior. He wasn't just comic relief, he showed real growth, especially in Season 3 when his character faced fatherhood. Gore's mix of humor and humanity turned Junior into one of sitcom history's most memorable characters. Hollywood noticed. He earned another NAACP Image Award nomination in 2004 for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series, along with another Young Artist Award nod. Across 5 seasons and over 100 episodes, George O. Gore II left his stamp on television history. Ironically, the role that defined his career was the one he never wanted. He had been ready to walk away, but destiny pulled him back for one last, unforgettable ride. And when it was over, he finally did what he had planned all along. Step back, live quietly, and focus on creativity outside of the spotlight. And when Gore was asked what his best advice was, he had this to say.
Damon Wayans. I can't exactly repeat what he told me, but one day I was going through something and he sat me down and he gave me advice that to this day I look back on every single day.
For millions of fans, he'll always be Junior, the lovable son whose goofy grin lit up My Wife and Kids. But for Giorgio Gore II, the greatest role he ever played was choosing peace over fame. His story reminds us that sometimes the bravest move isn't chasing the spotlight, it's walking away from it.